Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into something fascinating. We've looked closely at these excerpts from Divine Healing, God's Diverse Paths to Restoration. And our goal here is to kind of unpack the surprising insights, about how divine healing is actually shown in this material. Think of it as your quick guide to understanding the really complex nature of restoration described here, maybe moving past the usual ideas.
Yeah, it's an important distinction to make, I think, because many people might have this one specific picture of divine healing, maybe the instant miracle, that sort of thing.
Like the traumatic moment.
Exactly. But what these sources show us is, well, it's a much broader picture, a more intricate spectrum of how God actually works. So this deep dive, we're hoping, will show that God's methods are, frankly, more varied, more personal, and sometimes, well, surprisingly normal than we often think. It's really about seeing his power across a whole landscape of possibilities.
That really sets the scene well. So the sources, they start with this foundational promise, right? It's really powerful. But I will restore you to health and heal your wounds, declares the Lord, from Jeremiah.
Jeremiah 30:17.
And what jumps out immediately, and this really changes the perspective, is the emphasis that God works in diverse ways to bring healing. It's not just one set method.
Precisely. And the text actually lays out these diverse paths.
Yeah.
It makes it clear that divine healing isn't just, one type of intervention. It includes things like prayer, obviously, faith, but also natural remedies, doctors, medical knowledge, and yes, of course, those miraculous interventions too.
So it challenges that idea of having to pick one way.
Exactly. It sort of invites us to see God working through potentially all these different channels, not just one.
And the sources give some really vivid examples from the Bible that show this variety, like Namaan the leper.
Oh yeah, that's a classic. 2 Kings.
Right. He wasn't just instantly healed. He was told to do something quite ordinary, almost humbling. Dip 7 times in the Jordan River.
A muddy river, no less.
Yeah. And then you've got the Pool of Bethesda. Healing there was linked to a very specific condition being the first one in after the angels stirred the waters.
A very specific, almost fleeting opportunity.
And Jesus himself, his methods were so varied. Sometimes a simple touch.
Matthew 8:3, yeah.
Other times, just speaking a word, even from a distance.
Like with centurion servant, Matthew 8:13.
And then sometimes the healing seemed directly linked to the person's own faith, their action. Mark 5.34. It's quite a range.
And what's really interesting is how the sources connect these stories to us now. Just like God directed Namaan to that river or people to that pool. The idea is he might be leading you to a particular doctor or a specific place or maybe a unique methods for your healing today. It's less about a formula.
And more about a personal path.
Exactly. A deeply personalized journey, you could say. God orchestrating the specifics.
Okay, so if the paths are so varied and personal, what happens if one path just doesn't seem to work out? If you don't get the result you hoped for? This must bring us to thinking about our mindset, right? And maybe persistence. The sources mention James 1.5. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God.
Who gives generously.
So what does that mean if, a door seems to close on one potential healing path?
That's a really key question, and the sources offer, I think, quite a liberating view here. They strongly suggest you shouldn't automatically jump to thinking, oh, my faith must be weak, if one approach doesn't yield results.
Okay, so it's not necessarily about weak faith.
Not necessarily. It could actually be God redirecting you, saying, okay, try this other way. And that's where the wisdom and discernment James talks about become so vital. It's not giving up. It's actively seeking the next step, God's new direction.
That feels like a big shift, moving away from potential self-blame towards, like you said, seeking redirection. And the examples the sources use really highlight this idea of persistence and discernment, the Syrophoenician woman.
Oh, absolutely, Mark 7. A powerful example.
She kept pursuing, kept expressing faith, even when faced with what seemed like, barriers initially. And that persistence led to healing for her daughter.
Her tenacity is remarkable.
And even Jesus, the sources point out how he withdrew to pray. Not just to talk to the Father, but it seems to discern his will. That's in Luke.
Luke 5.1, yeah. It sets a model for us, doesn't it? Even when the path isn't immediately obvious, that continuous seeking is crucial.
So it's an ongoing thing, not a one-shot deal.
Exactly. The deep dive sources really push this idea of continuously actively seeking where God is leading, not just stopping if the first attempt doesn't pan out immediately. It's a conversation, a dynamic process.
Okay, so this dynamic seeking, It seems like it naturally leads to trust, right? Trusting God's timing, his direction, especially when things don't make immediate sense to us. The sources mention that if healing doesn't come one way, God might just have a completely different route planned, being open to the unexpected.
Yeah, definitely. And the example of Zacchaeus is, I think, a brilliant picture of this in Luke 19.
The tax collector.
That's a one. He didn't just stand there waiting. He had to actively do something quite unconventional, climb a sycamore tree just to see Jesus. It shows that sometimes God asks us to, well, move in faith, to step out of our comfort zone, take a specific, maybe unusual action as part of the process.
So it's not always passive waiting?
Not always. Sometimes it's responsive movement following a prompt.
And this idea of active trust, it also connects to something really important the sources highlight. Never condemn yourself. I think that hits home for a lot of people.
It really does.
They bring in Isaiah 55, those verses. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord.
As the heavens are higher than the earth.
Right. It really stresses that God's perspective, his timing, his methods, they're often way beyond what we can fully grasp, especially in the moment.
Yeah, we can't always see the full picture or connect all the dots while we're in the middle of it. And the text says, basically, that's okay. Don't beat yourself up over it.
Which must bring a sense of grace.
A profound message of grace.
Yeah.
Yeah, and patience, too. The healing journey, as these sources frame it, is ultimately guided by God's wisdom, his bigger plan. Not just by our understanding or our effort or even what we might see as our failures along the way. It's about kind of resting in his design, knowing his view is much, much larger than ours.
So wrapping all this up, what really stands out is this powerful picture of God's healing work. It's incredible variety, first off.
The diversity.
Then the importance of seeking his specific will for you, for your journey.
That personal aspect, yeah.
And finally, the absolute necessity of trusting his timing, his methods, even when they seem, well, unexpected or unclear. The sources leave us with that final encouragement from James 5. Is anyone among you sick? Let them call the elders of the church to pray over them.
And anoint them with oil in the name of the Lord. That practical step.
And that underlying affirmation from Exodus. God is your healer. That's the foundation.
It is. So the takeaway seems to be, keep seeking, keep trusting. Whether God leads you through doctors or persistent prayer or maybe a direct, unexpected intervention, just walk in faith, try to follow his leading, and believe that he's already working out your healing path.
So here's a final thought for you to maybe mull over. If divine healing really does cover such a huge range of miracles, yes, but also doctors, natural means, specific actions like dipping in a river or climbing a tree, how might truly grasping that breadth, that diversity, how might that fundamentally shift your perspective on what it means to actually pray for and receive healing in your own life? Something to consider.